The Last of Us is a 2013 action-adventure game developed by Naughty Dog and published by Sony Computer Entertainment. It has been cited as one of the greatest video games ever made. What, did you think that was my intro statement? I was reading that off Wikipedia, you silly goose. The Last of Us is a very special game to me. Ever since I first played it, I realized this is one of the best video game experiences I've ever had. Adding everything up from the experience with the characters and atmospheric details and the suspenseful and rewarding combat, it's pretty much a perfect video game for me. I made a video about why that is a long time ago, and I don't feel like I need to remake it because at that point I'd be hypocritical to remake something just for a production value upgrade, since I don't think I was really bad at writing at the time. Maybe it could have been a little deeper, but I'll let that one speak for itself. But I'm not here to talk about all that. I'm here to analyze whether or not the newly released remake is a worthwhile product. The common take all over the internet at its time of release was that, oh, this doesn't need a remake, that would just be a waste of time. I was one of those people because the first game is already like perfect to me, and I didn't think they would add anything besides better PS5 graphics and maybe one or two new mechanics from part 2, but I was still going to buy it anyway so I could form my own opinion. So was my hunch correct? Let's find out. I didn't feel the need to replay the game for this because, frankly, The Last of Us isn't a very replayable game. Evidently, I love it so much I can replay it, but not only was I really busy with other games before this one came out, I just didn't think it mattered that much. As a big fan, I was bound to notice details anyway.
Brandt? Brandt, stop!
So basically, the biggest upgrade over the original is simply just like graphical fidelity, now looking just as great as Last of Us 2, which is one of the most beautiful games ever in my opinion. The original art direction translated very well into Part 2's engine, and as a big fan of the original, it was nice seeing these places reimagined on better hardware. And I definitely think it makes the game more immersive too. The game flows from gameplay to cutscene very smoothly since they're no longer pre-rendered. The lighting is also really stunning. The new character models are also really detailed and look more lively and expressive than ever before. I've heard the take that some models in the OG version looked uncanny, which I don't really agree with, although I can appreciate this extra detail for sure. Maybe this is just me though, but in the scene where Ellie kind of looked more worried in the original somehow, or at least that's what I was thinking when I got to this part. Besides the graphics, another thing carried over from Last of Us 2 was the slew of accessibility options, meaning pretty much anyone can experience this game. Not only can you customize the difficulty in specific ways, like making the player more or less vulnerable or tweaking how smart the enemies are, or even enabling permadeath modes, but you can also put on gameplay modifiers to lighten the load of combat, in case it's too stress-inducing or overwhelming for you. Personally, that's what I love about encounters, but if you want to prioritize the story experience, which is the main focus of the game, then I won't judge out loud. Although I will say, and this kind of goes for Last of Us 2 as well, maybe having some achievements to reward the player for going the extra mile and beating the game on higher difficulties would be nice. I mean, I played at the moderate difficulty setting, but looking at the first game's trophies which ask you to beat it on the hardest difficulty, then seeing this game which just wants you to pretty much collect everything makes me realize that platinum trophies feel like they're getting easier to collect in a way. But I mean, easy platinum, I'll take those every now and then. Maybe I'd platinum this game one day since it's easier now, but it also seemed exhausting finding all these minute things. Not really trying to criticize anything, I'm just rambling about stuff, don't mind me. But anyways, back to the main point. You could seriously customize the gameplay and difficulty of the experience so players of any skill set or condition can enjoy this game. You can disable certain situations from happening, like allies getting grabbed by foes or stopping enemies from flanking you. The game can also help with traversal by making it more clear where to go or letting you skip puzzles if getting wood plank for Ellie to ride on is just too much for you to handle. And if you're visually impaired, then you can enable the high contrast display, where the player and enemies are clearly highlighted in the environment around you. And you can even enable descriptive voices to describe cutscenes to give you an idea of what's going on. Although if you're 100% blind, then tough shit, you ain't playing this game. Come on, Naughty Dog, my completely paralyzed friend can't play this game. What do you mean it's accessible to everyone? Even featuring minor customization like fully customizing the subtitles, it's pretty clear that Naughty Dog cares a lot about making their games accessible to a very wide audience. And that kind of quality assurance is commendable and valuable, but for me personally, it doesn't affect me much because I'm not disabled or anything. Who knows, maybe in like 20 years if I get into a car crash, then I'll be singing in a different tune. And besides the prettier graphics and accessibility features, that's kind of where the differences end. Most people were at least expecting a few mechanics from part 2 thrown into the game, like crawling or maybe one or two new guns, but overall the gameplay experience remains pretty much unchanged. There wasn't anything that really needed to be fixed with the gameplay. I thought it was serviceable and in fact pretty fun, but I don't think most consumers want to buy a remake remake where it has virtually no gameplay changes besides better animations. Well, okay, they did reprogram the enemy AI to be much smarter apparently. They keep track of your latest location and stuff, so I guess that makes the game feel better to play, but it's nothing I can honestly call game changing. I did mainly notice how Ellie doesn't run around like a dumbass during stealth nearly as often, but that was just a nitpick with the first game. To be frank, I feel like most casual players wouldn't really notice this if Naughty Dog didn't mention it, and I mean, technically, the remastered version had more content with the tacked on factions multiplayer mode. It's not something I cared about. I remember playing it briefly with my friend, but I couldn't get into it. Maybe I will one day, but at the moment, it's not something I really care for. However, I'm trying to take into account every factor of this remake in addition to giving my own personal thoughts, so it's worth mentioning. I guess there is a decent explanation as to why. Naughty Dog has been working on this standalone multiplayer experience like the Last of Us factions, which we don't know much about at the moment, so you could say that justifies them not bringing back factions multiplayer, but either way, it's still $70 with less content than its latest revision. So why don't we discuss that talking point, the most major one for me. This is a full price game, and since this is a remake, looking at the content and differences it offers to differentiate itself from the other versions that are readily available, I straight up don't think the $70 price tag is justified. I mean, I already think $70 is a lot to play a game at launch, but games are becoming more expensive, so I guess that was just inevitable. But your other option, The Last of Us Remastered, is dirt cheap online. The same goes for the PS3 version, although most people are going to choose a PS4 one. And on the PS5, you have access to the PlayStation Plus collection, where The Last of Us Remastered is free to download, which is even how I first played it shortly after the PS5 launched. So being exclusive to a console backwards compatible with older versions of the game is just silly, and that's not even mentioning how little has changed in these versions mechanically. So in the end, what is this, a full price texture pack? You know, some PS4 games got free PS5 visual upgrades with new DualSense features and stuff, and those were usually free, or sometimes $10, which I already don't like that much. And this one charges $70. Some could say that since the story and world were the biggest point to The Last of Us, it didn't need any mechanical changes in a remake, but either way, the price needs to reflect that, since the other options I have are much cheaper and I'm not losing much. To some, I'm gaining stuff actually. Oh my god, I saw a black screen going into a cutscene. This game looks terrible. I can't be immersed at all. Whenever I was playing The Last of Us Remastered, I never looked at the graphics and thought to myself, this needs a remake, just for the sake of a graphical overhaul. Yes, this technically is the best version of The Last of Us you can play because of the graphical fidelity, how it enhances the game's immersion with more polished character models and environments, and the handy accessibility features for certain minorities of players. But as I've made clear, I think $70 is a big commitment for prettier graphics. Graphics aren't everything, man. Some could point to this and talk about how it proves the gaming industry's obsession with graphics above all else, and I'm not really sure how accurate that is nowadays, since I still see tons of big games with unique art directions, and I also don't think The Last of Us falls into one of those generic looking realistic games. It has zombies for fuck's sake. I've also seen this image thrown around justifying the remake's existence by comparing the time between versions to other popular remakes of some more beloved games, but to me, the time between PS3 and PS5 isn't the issue here, although technology was advancing much more substantially back then. It seems a little weird, but the idea of giving this game visuals more in line with the modern Part 2 is fine. My issue is the fact that this is being treated as full price, with little new content offered to me. In fact, I've seen some remakes that add much more content and were still priced less, like the Crash Insane trilogy. While the main appeal was the visual overhaul, it's more justified since the originals looked like this. It also actually adds new content like working the time relics into Crash 1 and 2, a few brand new DLC levels, and playing as Coco. This was only $40. I'll end the video on this. I really enjoyed the technical upgrade to one of my favorite games ever, but I also wouldn't treat this as a full price game. I'd wait for a sale or a price drop if you want to pick this up eventually, rather than just playing the older versions, which I have no issue with. Maybe if it was like $40 or if there were more changes, then it would be more valuable to me, but as of now, I don't think it's fully worth it. So why did I buy it? Because I wanted haptic feedback while petting the giraffe. Yeah, never mind guys, this is totally worth it. I don't think I can ever go back to this gross version.